جستجویم دارد و من نیستم پیدا جهانی جستجویم دارد و من نیستم پیدا نفس سوز ای هوس نفس سوز ای هوس تا آتش افتد در سراغ من جهان جستجوی جهانی جستجویم دارد و من. Who am I? Who are you? Who are the Hazaras? Who is the Hazara pioneer? These are the questions that we would like to ask from the very beginning, to restart with so many people forgetting about their very recent history, their ancestral connections, their achievements, their record, their memories, in short. Welcome to the Hazara Pioneers Library. I think I should be speaking a bit lowly because my throat is not functioning to the best of its design. I should say I have not been looking after it. The Hazara Pioneers Library, as I have explained before, we started the A Vizier's Daughter novel by LILLIAS Hamilton, and we've got the second chapter ready to go. Why we tell this story? Because this is the story of the fall of the Hazara lands. Chapter 1, A Hazara Village by LILLIAS Hamilton. Those of you who did miss the introduction, please watch the introduction part of this. This is chapter 1 of the book. For that introduction, I think you need to go back one step and watch that one. So when you're ready for chapter 1, the chapter's name is A Hazara Village. Such a crowd of girls, and every one of them hideous. But they were quite unconscious of that, and probably there was not one among them who considered herself anything below the average in the scale of beauty. چند دختر جمع بود میگفت یک دنش راضی نبود که بگم ما از تو کمم تو از ما زیادی قبول ندارم مگه مقابله بچهش. This is, we are talking about 1891, 1890s. 130 سال پیش. So, nor were they according to the accepted standard of their tribe, for they were Hazaras. Broad, squat little persons with faces like full moons and heads like rugged bullets, all bumps and nodules covered with straight, coarse, lank black hair, which only half concealed the curious outline of the skull. Moreover, they had tiny, sunken eyes, high cheekbones, flat noses, sallow complexions, feet and hands like their persons, short, broad, and powerful, just like the Malik. And when they walked, it was with a heavy, plodding gait. Plodding gait. Their dress, too, seemed especially adopted to emphasize these peculiarities. It was made of print, wadded throughout, and consisted of a body, a full skirt, made separately, but sewn together at the waist, where there was a thick piping to give substance enough to support the heavy skirt. There was no attempt at shaping or fitting. Shape say niya, fitting durust niya, khulasa ek tobra jor dade janchi. The sleeves even were quite straight, narrowing gradually from the shoulder to the wrist. تنگ مشده اینجی. Only the gathers of the thick waded skirt made the waist look narrower than the hips and gave to these curious little people a certain grotesque, picturesque appearance. Idabari Hulia, LILLIAS Hamilton, the very Hazara ki daro introduce mana, the very Hazara village gap misna, the very overall Hulia Hazara bayan the mane zu dehat ki zikr zur mana daro. Their surroundings were picturesque too. Perfectly pure blue sky. A sky we know nothing of in England. Clearly, if possible, even then a Monte Carlo sky. And the whole atmosphere was dear to Purkashish, Jazzab. Everywhere around stretched undulating hills and dales. Artaraf ko tapaya. All beautifully green with spring grass, dotted over with innumerable cows and sheep and goats and a few camels, while away, far in the distance, against that wonderful clear blue sky, rose the white tops of the higher mountains, which were still covered with snow, for it was spring and the snows had not melted yet. Close behind the girls and forming their immediate background rose a mud tower, یک منار خاکی. دخترون شته یک دهاتا منظره چندان دخترو جمع باز یک دن تاور اونجی. خاکی منار, which might have been called two-storied, دو منزله, but that the place where the lower room ought to have been was filled up by a solid mass of mud, baked hard by the sun of many summers, so as a matter of fact, it contained just one room, capable of holding about a dozen persons closely packed together. This room and the flat roof above it being reached by a steep, winding staircase, no two steps of which were the same height. Zina George da Magaret kudam zina de dighna mogra. Some were so high that only the very active person could have climbed them. Others so low as hardly to be worth calling steps at all, so that a stranger unaccustomed to these irregularities was apt to get a shock when, having raised his foot almost up to the knee of the other leg, preparatory to making a huge step forward, he suddenly found it drop almost to the level of the one on the lower step. Of these slight inconveniences, however, the village inhabitants were blissfully unconscious. Unai dagam zina bud ki thai zina bala qaram marat memat magre gadam naashna ki memat zarur bale zina khata bashud. This was the tower. ये किस्से एक मोमिन में खाक जोर शुदा ये मंजर ची बुद मीनार किस दूर मालूम शायद मैंने ज़िहात. A place of the greatest importance in the village. मुहिम तरीन जाय व मकान यज़ू मंतका वनुमो साख्तमान वनुमो building है. At night, it was occupied by some dozen men, all fully armed. एक तकरीबन 12 नफर मुकम्मल सलाह, who took it in turns to sleep on the roof. Dawari boren nafar du nafara boren dabal paira bidin diga shabain khawkin sam diga nafar bora, so as to be able themselves protected by a rampart about 10 inches high to keep watch on the country round about, and if necessary sound a drum to summon all the male villagers to protect the flocks and herds and young spring crop from Turkoman tribes. यानी इस तरफ तुर्कमान क़बाइलाई तुर्कमान उनजे हम हमला वगैरह मशहूर बता कि ना हमेशा उनजी चौकीदारी में करते बता कि इस सवाश की कसा अगर खबर की दिनिश निजुत खबर की, who were continually making raids on them, laying waste their land, carrying off their cattle and their sheep, and also sometimes their girls and young boys as slaves. For Hazaras are naturally hardworking and industrious, and being also strong and active. They make excellent servants and even beasts of burden, and in the towns, at any rate, are cheaper to feed than donkeys. Go faster, carrying almost as much, and do not need a man to drive them. The kharkari matlab muga dige nara ma bilkul fit me garnam. Poor, heavy, dull Hazara, but he is patient and industrious and not really devoid of intelligences. In spite of the subjugation in which he is held, 1890, 1880 इनमी दौर की लिलियस हैमिल्टन दरो मंजर कशीमन एक देहाती हज़रा از شنیدی قصه گل بیگم و دیگه نفریایی که میشناخته بود از اون منطقه این داستانه که بیان منه خب اینجی یک دیسکریپشن ظاهره دیسکریپشن امزو گاوه امزو وقته و امزو ایمیجی که از روتیم داشت poor, heavy and dull. But he is patient and industrious and not really devoid of intelligence in spite of the subjugation in which he is held. هي أسيرة، هي زيري بار، هي زيري فشارة. باز هم ای صبر منادره. خیلی زحمت میکشه مگر خیلی صبوره. مگر خیلی زیری فشاره مسته. So his day may come yet. شاید واریزی با یک روز. And then let his master beware. هر کس کیر ده غلامی ورده، هر کس کیر اسیر کده. اون نفر دیگه جان خود بیخره باید. For he is fierce, revengeful, and cruel. If he ever does strike, he will strike hard. زد بد میزنه را. هوشیار تو باش، خیلی هوشیار تو باشه. To the left of the tower, and joined on to it was a long, low building made also of mud. بس एक दराज building है. از خاک جور شده از گل. This was evidently a cattle shed. جای حیوانات بوده ظاهره. Or a stable or something of that sort. For it was open in front, and at the time at which we are being introduced to it, about 9 o'clock in the morning, was occupied chiefly by cocks and hens and a few pigeons puffed out and prancing around in semicircles, paying devout court to apparently indifferent mates who stalked contemptuously on, picking up here a grain, there a scrap of bread, albeit casting a hurried occasional glance back just to see that their admirers were keeping up unflagging attention. In front lay a great sheepdog, rough, unkempt, apparently asleep, but watchful. یک سگ متر خوشیله منده مگرم خوب سهل من از چی میشه براز خود را چیزه. خب این مناظری مختلفی تذکره ها و توصیف و دیسکریپشن و اکسپلینیشن امون منظری دهاتی حضرت در 1880 بابات. At right angle to this shed, Ali Aukhori Haywanat Kesta, Ruibarizi, and opposite the tower stretched a long, low building, or row of buildings projecting nowhere more than 20 or 30 feet from the hills which protected them from the chill north winds. One-storied buildings, for the most part, but one at last, that adjoining the shed had a sort of upper story, closed on 3 sides by a dead wall, but open on the 3rd, except where it was partially screened in by a number of tall bulrushes. Okay, beyond this and down the hill, there were other similar buildings, many of them in fact, but the mud was less smoothly laid and the ground in front of them less carefully swept, and they projected less beyond the protecting hill, so little, in fact, that it was easy enough to see that their outer wall was a mere frontage to the true dwelling, which was literally hollowed out of the hillside and extended often 2, sometimes 3 rooms deep into its very center. Other dwellings had no wall in front of them at all, but were mere caves, more like the habitations of wild beasts than of men. جاي زندگیش نیه غار اللي مني مغارة زندگینا اینا چندی از تذکره چی رقم معلوم ماشین لیمی دهات کم بنظرم کی چگر بریتو واضح شد که چی رقم دهادا. Such then in brief was a Hazara village consisting of some 200 houses or so, and the dwelling with the little scrap of what one may call second story was the residence of the chief or mir of one of the most important subdivisions of the Hazara tribe. Next to this structure and separated from it indeed but by a few yards was another similar in all particulars except that it could boast of no upper chamber. This was the residence of the chief cousin, his brother. Chief's cousin, or his brother, he called him, though he was his uncle's, not his father's son, who acted as his assistant and advisor, his vizier. In fact, a man of rather unusual qualities in that country, for he had ideas, ambitions, plans. اینالی مو آمادیم دبلیزی دو بیلدینگی که تایستش دیم. یکش از میر صاحبه، یکو 200 خانه من از منطقه. دیگه پالیوزو کم یک منزلش مگر مخص کتا. خانه وزیر صاحبه. ازی خاطر دختری وزیر. رسیدی ده اینجی؟ دیروز پرسان مگه دیگه کجا شدی؟ موچه نام دختر وزیر چی کرده؟ Moreover, اینالی وزیر صاحب که است مگه چی رقم بود که unusual qualities داشتی نفر. چرا؟ He had ideas, ambitions, plans. Moreover, he had much more influence with his tribe. تأثیر گذار بود دمانی قبیله مردم را قبش گوش مگد. Then had the nominal chiefs. وقدر کی مخودی چیف را وقدر قص قبول نداشت. اینج در این منطقه مردم وزیر را اون مقدر قدر مکد. قبش گوش مکد. And was everywhere looked up to and respected. اینالی شد داستانی ویلیج موریم پس سریم زود دختروی که منشتا بود. They were chattering, of course, those girls. How could it be otherwise in any nation? چند دخترو جمع باشه دار جایی که باشه این میرقمه. When 20 young female things were sitting together in a group, but these girls had something special to talk about. Evidently, something more than usually interesting was going on, and every now and then one would pout and look dissatisfied, perhaps even a little sad, or another would laugh and look coy and happy and knock over the companion squatting beside her who had evidently been chaffing her. Nothing rude or rough in the push that had sent her neighbor sprawling, only play which was in no way resented. یک دیگه خو تلکو مسخرکو باز خندکو تشکو. This is going on there. But there was a good deal of noise. And certainly no one was thinking of work. When another young woman stepped from the vizier's dwelling and joined them. دزی دورانی بندار و قصه و کهانی یک دنه دختر دیگه از خانه وزیر برشده برو مایه که بایم قشمو قصه کنیم چیگاه با اینجی. Her dress was exactly similar to theirs. کالایش مثل بزودی دختر وریا. Her hair black. مویش سیاه. سیاه موی جان. سیاه موی جان. Her mold distinctly powerful. قوی. But there the resemblance ceased. بس دیگه زباد دیگه شی مختلف بود. For she was tall. بلند قد ترس تمام بود. Full head and shoulders taller than any other girl present. از تمام بلند قد. Moreover, she had fair, smooth skin, گندمی رنگ, and bright complexion, روشن. Large, intelligent eyes. A nose instead of a knob in the center of her face. Proper یک بینی معلوم مشد خوب هم بینی دیگه. A well-shaped head placed on a well-shaped neck, long, well-shaped feet and hands, and a step as elastic as a deer's. مثل آهورا مرة. Elastic. Carriage erect and dignified. And this was Gul Begum, the pride and beauty of her tribe, her father's hope and joy, the object of many and ill-natured remarks from the less well-favored of her sex. Alas, that it should be so. What are you all doing here making such a noise? She asked. Ah, Dilbahar, you here? She broke off, suddenly frowning. Go to your work, bad girl. Are the pots and pans all cleaned, the meat washed, the rice ready? What you sit? That you sit idling here? Casa peler shuste tamam chis jam kede kende qaran shi pat kede shiste. She went on. The girl, thus addressed, slunk quietly away. Kashta doktor rafarar kazgirsh. But who have you here? She went on, spying among the group the cause of all the laughter. So, all the chatter and excitement. Maryam, now, Maryam, what did I tell you? A wizened, cunning-eyed old woman in the center of the group. The bain is nami bina kinji shishta bai yagdana kaimini. Looked up coaxingly. You told me that no young girl, least of all you, my lovely child, could possibly mean, she said. I never say what I do not mean. Kaimini maga ma kai guftadum. Tu guftadi. Emi tere guftora maga. Gulbegum maga I never say what I do not mean. Ma ej waqt tu cheez na magum ki man guftani naim. The girl replied firmly, I told you to go. Kaimini maga daro. I told you to go and not come back. We don't want you here. Making our girls dissatisfied, putting foolish notions in their heads. Fisad mani bain zu the gosh zu zimugi the gosh zu zumugi. Puf patakamani taraf. Making them neglect their work. Tamam rabekar ke deshan deinji. We don't believe your promises. And we are not afraid of bad omens. Azab maya belbaya. Oh, aren't we? Whispered one girl, squatting on her feet at her feet to her neighbor. Azab It is all very well for Gul Begum. She was born under a lucky star. But it is different for us who have to work now as girls. رايح پیدا کنی چون مخال باید که تش دخترش دل باید مپشت کار باشنی and will probably have to work harder still as wives باز رفتی خانه شویی که رفتی باز اونش دبل کار کن از این خاطر موقع موششتی پیشزی عجایی که ایمینی چیز میگه چرخم راه نشان میدم ورا گل بیگم موقع کش بدی فورا از اینجی come just this once give me an old pair of long leather boots or a little salt and I'll tell you your fortune عجایی مگه تو بیا تو یک دفعه مگه تو کم مرگ امی چیز بیدی یکو چپلای مپلای بیدی یا یکم نمک بیدی باز ما تو رو مگم که بخت تو چرخمه I'll tell you your fortune and such a fortune too my fair princess such a fortune and the old hand rubbed her hands and chuckled to herself قلت بسم ما ذبحت البريت I have others to whom to give my old boots منجي كلون افرياك بوت نادرة مامو بوتاي كوني خونار شر ندم كتور بيدم Gul Begum said others who work and who deserve them زحمت میکشه حق شیر داره میدم شیر تو رو شیر بیدم تو چیز کار کده غیر از تورا You only roam through the country telling lies از منطقه دا منطقه این میتی لگ شده مری مایی دروغ پف کده رایی Deceiving young girls بدبخت که تمام دختر رو Get up, be gone بالچه گمش رنگ خورگم که اینجا A scowl gathered on the old fortune teller's face. She bent her head down till it rested on her knees, then looked up sideways at the girl towering above her. What lies have I told? She asked. Did Sarah's uncle lose his cattle? Did Nekbacht's own father sell her into slavery for a gun? Did Nuqra wed above her highest expectations? Did Dilbahar become a disgrace to her tribe? And is she not now glad to hide her face in a stranger's house? A servant, a menial, where she would formerly have been waited on as a guest? Answer me that. Gul Begum had turned a little white. What the old woman said was true enough, and the girl, though cast in a different mold, was not altogether above the superstitions of her race. همو بهم روم داشت دیگه. وقتی او دلیل داد گفت ما نگفته در مینی ترموشم ما نگفته در ممتر نشد ممتر نشد ما چیز درو گفتم ها؟ قال گل بیگم کم رنگشی مپره. Ignoring the first part of the old woman's speech, which was perhaps unanswerable, she caught hold of the latter. أول نيس يشوف قلت ما جوابش ندرم دمنيش تو جوابش ميدم. Dilbahar was a good girl. قصة Dilbahar مانا تو مجي وتر مشا ما مفهمون كي چكار شدت قزو. Dilbahar was a good girl till you put your curse on her. تاکه تو لعنتی است تو سایه زوبلی وزو افتید که او بدبخت شد. She said she never went astray till then. Besides, service is no disgrace. و او که رفته کجای خدمت منا او کدام بد کار کرده کار مانه دیگه. It is better to be good and serve than to have so much time on one's hand that one's thoughts stray off to evil. وقدر بیکار بیشی که مو فکر تو استی طرف شر باره. اونو کار گفتو می. And what about your time? The old hag asked, chuckling again. Where did your thoughts soar, my beauty? نازنین ما فکرایست تو کدام طرف ریش ده. To Bamiyan, perhaps, or to some yet higher sphere maybe. دخانه گو میر دیگر ای تو A hot, angry flush mounted to the girl's cheek. She stretched out her hand menacingly. "Begone, old witch," she said. "Begone. Half the misfortunes of this tribe come from your idle pratings." Begone and don't dare show your face here again. For if you do, I'll set the dogs on you. The old woman rose slowly and with evident difficulty. She was stiff and her back was bent with age and the weights she had perhaps had to carry in her youth. Suddenly, she darted forward and seized Gulbegum's still outstretched arm. And casting her glance hurriedly at the hand that had thus come with her stage. She examined it eagerly, then flung it from her with a mocking, derisive laugh. "Ha ha 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 ha." "Begone, old witch, begone," she echoed, jeering. "Yes, I will be gone. It'll be. Come, old Maryam, come. Someday, come and tell me of something to live for. Something of peace and love and rest." یگو روز که آمدی پس که آمدی باز از انسانیت از مروت از راحت از آرامش که بگی نه از شر و از فساد. Somewhere, anywhere. But Maryam will not come. The Vizier's daughter, the chief's niece, has cast old Maryam out. Is it likely that she will care to visit the rejected, the prisoner, the slave? Old Maryam has nothing good for you. Fine, handsome, haughty maid. Your pride must have a fall. You will have dust to lick and tears to dry. مگر روزی بعد دعوت در سر تو بایا که تو خاک بخوری خاک بلسی. Your day will soon be over and you will come to envy old Maryam. گفتو مرا لزنج برنی. گفتو تو روز در سر تو بایا که تو مریاد کنی. Who wanders free among the Hazara hills. ما خو ارجع که دلم مستمرم تو ایک جای رفته نمیتونی بس. Then picking up a bundle, fastening in a red handkerchief, she planted her stick firmly on the ground and slowly and steadily walked down the hill. Azinji? Ajay reached. But Gulbegum stood still where she had left her. The flush had died out of her cheeks, rangshi paridabut, and she had turned deadly pale. She made 2 or 3 steps forward, then suddenly stopped and put her hand up to her heart. She felt a chill all through her. Her fingers even were white. The group of chattering girls had melted away, and she alone, cold and shivering, with a curse upon her. This is chapter 1 completed with this Hazara village chapter. I hope that it has been delivered امیدوار هستم چرخم امیدوار هستم که میتر بیشتر دیگه 900 باکل آردیشم بگی نوروزوار چیز میگه در انگلیسی بس بگی it's 1000 is telling the story of Hazara village in 1880s probably دور رسته که یک منطقه ازراره یک دهات ازراره منظر کشی منه و چند چیزایی و این منظری حادثه که در بین از دخترو دختر وزیر مشه و کیمینی از اینج بالج داره مشه chapter 2 را که دیدیم the نامی forecasts چیز مایه از بعد او داستان است اینا رو برای شما رسندیم کامنتس خورده درباره نریشنی ستوری درباره ستایل ازی اگر شما خواستین کامنت بیدین پوزیتیو کنسترکتیو تاکه داستان را این داستانی غمانگیزه دیگه بیخی غمانگیزه چیش خطرناک داستانی and we'll come back to this point that what is the point of narrating first of all is to introduce Vizier's daughter دختر وزیر معرفی شدن the social media توی Mechidtv شما ببینین دویم لایبرری را اکسرسایز کنیم که دی هزارا پاینیرز لایبرری سے مراد او ستوریز مربوط به پاینیر سپیریٹ را که بعد از این ستوری ریلی ستوری داستانی که نزدیک دزی ریجن ما میبینیم و لگسی از داستانه از که فراموش شده او را ما میگیم رفرنس میدیم دیساوی دیس داستانی باکل و این تمام داستانه بود برای نوسا اگر نوسا گو teenagers young people this is for you I hope you can sit together with family members with friends watch it again tell the story explain to one another and wait for the chapter 2 next one